Hello and welcome back to the Human Paradox podcast. I'm your host Aaron, and I'm joined here by my co-host Ben, who has probably got a lot on his mind because, as far as I'm tracking, you read 2 whole compendiums of Invincible yesterday. Is that true?
No, I just read the third.
Right. There's 3.
So I had the first 2 done months ago. Like I was done with the first 2 by the time you and I actually watched the show, and then I just didn't read the third one until last night.
Right. So, yeah. So for this episode, we want to do kind of like a 2-part series where we wanted to talk about Robert Kirkman's 2 most famous IPs, The Walking Dead and Invincible. But before we compare the 2, we wanted to talk about each of them individually. And I've already read all of the Invincible comics. He got me into it through the show, and I binge read all of them in like a month, I think. But in order for you to get caught up to where I was, you had to read all of it last night. And how long did that take you? Because you texted me at like...
Well, so I started the third compendium at probably like 10 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't finish it until probably like, 4?
I think it was
earlier than that. It was like 2.
It was pretty late when you texted me saying, "Hey, I'm done," and then I was like, "Ooh, he's not going to be able to read Walking Dead then, probably."
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had other stuff to do because I was at work, so.
Yeah. But not getting into specifics, he was on a long detail.
Yeah.
But so you have a fresh mind when it comes to Invincible. It's still fresh, but I have an older take on it.
So when you talk about stuff like this with in-depth precision, as we're about to do, you'll remember a lot of things that you didn't think you remembered.
Right.
I just want to preface this by saying this is not going to be like a would we recommend you read it or watch the show. The answer is obviously yes. We're making a podcast on the topic of Invincible. This is going to be full-fledged spoilers with everything. Predictions for the show, maybe at some point.
I mean, if you click on I'm guessing that this will be between an hour and 2 hours. If you click on an over hour-long video talking about Invincible and get mad that there's spoilers, like, you kind of did it to yourself, so I don't feel bad. But we're going to go really in-depth.
If you wanted to do a quick overview of the series for anybody that wants to get an idea of what should we read or watch... without spoilers, how would you...
The only way that I could summarize Invincible without spoilers is that it's a very gory, very realistic, very modern take on Superman, if that makes any sense. That's the best way... Well, the problem is that I can't really explain Invincible because there's nothing quite...
So I would say...
Ironically, the only thing that's like Invincible out there, I think, is The Boys or The Walking Dead. And The Walking Dead is another Robert Kirkman IP, and The Boys is basically Invincible, just live action. So it's really hard for me to explain it or compare it to something.
Have you seen The Boys? Or read The Boys?
I've seen a few episodes of The Boys.
It's nothing like Invincible at all.
Really?
So The Boys...
I watched the first episode.
So The Boys is... a series where a corporation basically like creates superpowered individuals. Well, and they have like a makeshift Justice League, but all of them are bad guys. They're all just pieces of shit, and the good guys they don't have any superpowers, so they're like hunting down superpowered individuals.
I didn't explain myself properly when I said that it's like The Walking Dead and The Boys. I said it's like The Boys because it's very gory. And it's like The Walking Dead because of the character growth and how the characters switch sides and switch their morals a lot, right? That's what I meant, right?
I would say Invincible is a very detailed and long analysis of the, I guess you could say, objective morality. It's a very big topic that floats on throughout the 3 compendiums of what pushes the borderlines of what is okay to do for the good of the world. Oh,
thank you for bringing that up, because to go back, you asked me to briefly the best way that I could summarize it now that I think about it is that Invincible is a critique of the idea of superheroes. That's what it is to me. It's a very...
I'd say that.
It's a very long-winded, but not like... That makes it sound bad. It takes a very long time, right? It's a series that explores every possible angle that a superhero could possibly take in his life ultimately to critique the idea of being a superhero, right? And it's very gory, very adult. There's a lot of swearing. There's sex in it, right? There's a rape scene in it, which you texted me about last night. You were like, "Well, that just happened." It's very adult, very adult. And
I'd say it's adult. It's not necessarily as adult as the show led it on to believe, because in the show it's like nothing but swearing all the time. In the comics, they swear when it means something. Like they only say the F word a few times.
Right.
You know what I mean? But in the show, they say it all the time.
While we're on the subject of that, before we get in depth into anything, let me ask you this quick question. Obviously, there's only one season of Invincible out right now on Amazon Prime. So just comparing the arc that we saw on TV to the arc in the comics, which do you like more, the show or the comics?
Well, the arc that we saw in the show was literally the first arc in the comics.
Well, that's why I'm saying. That's why I'm saying not which one is better overall, but like given what we've seen, which one do you like more?
Oh, like comparing like how they did it in the comics to how they did it in the show.
Yes, which one do you think did it better?
I think I liked it in the show more because, number one, the voice acting is phenomenal, and seeing certain scenes that are just gory as hell take place in the format of a cartoon, you feel it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I think the hopelessness aspect of the show works a little bit more than the way that they portrayed it in the comics, because there are definitely more story arcs in the comics that make you feel more hopeless.
Let me ask you this. What do you think is the sole... Because in my mind, there's one reason... Because I agree with you. The show so far did the first arc better. And there's one reason why that is. And what do you think that one reason might be?
I feel like they adapted the cartoon for a more modern...
Like, there's a lot of changes, but I'll just split... The number one change for me that makes the show, at least for season 1, better than the comics is... having Omni-Man betray the Guardians of the Globe in episode 1, because in the comics that does not happen until like 1 or 2 chapters before his final battle with Mark, right? And it's fine, it works for the comics, but in the show, seeing that happen on episode 1 and then throughout all of season 1, season 1 of Invincible almost tries to make you feel like Debbie, right? The show tries to make you feel as desperately, blindly hopeful as she is, right? Scouring every last corner, looking for any possible reason for why Omni-Man could have done what he did, despite the fact that like she knows there is no reason. And that's us, the audience, right? We're watching the show thinking, oh, okay, there's obviously some reason, right? No, you just wanted to kill them. And it was right in front of your face the whole time, but you felt so bad for Debbie, and you wanted Mark to be happy so bad, and you wanted everything to work out that you were hoping, oh yeah, sure, there's going to be something. And nope, there wasn't. So the moment that Mark finally finds out, all of that repressed feelings that you were feeling for that, all of that hope is just immediately gone, and you're in Debbie's shoes, and you're forced to watch Mark get beat half to death. And it's fine in the comics, but the build-up makes it so much more emotional in the show.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the voice acting in the show does a lot to... So after I watched the show before I read the first couple issues of the comics. Okay. So I hear like their voices when I read. Yeah. So I think that helped me like the comics a lot more later on. Like, I don't like the show better than the comics at this point. Okay. But that's not really fair because there's only been one season of the show.
No, that's why I said, right, just the first arc.
Just the first arc, yeah, it's really good. Before we deep dive into spoilers, I think we should talk a little bit about Robert Kirkman's writing style. Because for me, it takes a little bit to get used to it.
What do you mean?
So, the first work of Robert Kirkman I ever read was The Walking Dead. And when you're used to a certain style of writing in comics, for me, I was used to Scott Snyder's writing in comics. He's very plot-oriented. He's not necessarily the best dialogue guy. A good example is Tom King's latest Batman run. The one that I was telling you about that got canceled. Yeah. He's not a very good...
character building?
He's not very good at writing dialogue.
Okay.
For example, there's an entire issue where Batman is breaking into Santa Prisca to fight Bane, essentially. And he keeps repeating the same line of dialogue over and over and over and over again.
What line is that?
It's like something along the lines of, I am Batman, I'm here, come and fight me. If you don't, I'm gonna break your freaking neck or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but Robert Kirkman is very. He's very dialogue centric with his writing, and it took a little bit for me to get used to that. For example, I know we're not talking about The Walking Dead, but the first couple issues of The Walking Dead, it seems like they say the same things over and over and over again. For me, I was like, well, that's just lazy writing. This is like a filler episode, a filler issue that doesn't really need to be here. But when you reread it, you realize that his writing is very real. Like, this is how people would be talking and reacting if they were in this situation. So take that back to Invincible. I like the fact that it's not as vulgar as the show because it makes it a little bit more real. The only people that like really curse and like it makes it a bigger deal when Omni-Man starts, cursing like crazy and calling people pets and animals. Like, it makes it a bigger deal when it just comes out of nowhere versus in the comics versus the show. And I do really appreciate his writing style now. I think if I was going to make a hierarchy of my favorite comic writers, I would put him probably in my top 3.
Okay.
I wouldn't put him number 1 overall because I don't think that's fair. I haven't read everything he's written, and I haven't read everything that every other guy's ever written. But in terms of my favorite comics of all time, I think The Walking Dead might be the greatest comic series ever written. And that's coming from me, who is head over heels in love with superhero comics.
Well, I haven't seen enough comics to confidently say that, but I can say that between the show and the comics, I far prefer the Walking Dead comics
to Invincible, or just into comics in general.
In both regards, I think that the Walking Dead comics are better than the Invincible comics, but the Invincible comics are still a 10 out of 10, right? That's just me singing praises to the Walking Dead comics.
It's a preference.
Yeah,
I think if someone is wanting to get into Robert Kirkman, they should start with Invincible. I think it's easier to start with Invincible than go right into The Walking Dead because The Walking Dead's in black and white.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it's very saying post-apocalyptic is.
There's a lot of
obviously
there's a lot of politics in The Walking Dead that, like, if you miss a chapter or if you miss a chapter or like a few pages, you're not gonna know what the hell is going on. Whereas like in Invincible, like you get it, they're fighting the bad guy.
I will say this: I think if you're planning on reading the entire series over the course of a year, because you can obviously do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to just sit down with a compendium and read the entire thing. I think The Walking Dead is easier to pick back up because you remember all of the events that take place in The Walking Dead. To me, are easier to remember. You know what I mean? So like the last of the first compendium when
you think about it,
when like Judith and Lori die, like you remember that. You remember characters' deaths.
A lot happens in The Walking Dead, but when you think about it, really, there's not a whole lot of locations. Like
there's not very many characters either.
Like when you think about it from the comics, there's the camp outside of what's the name of the city?
Macon? No, not Macon.
Atlanta. There's the camp outside of Atlanta, the farm, the prison, and then Alexandria. And then those are our homes. And then there's other communities, but those are the only homes that our people really know, right? And the show, there's other places, like there's the CDC.
I think another thing about The Walking Dead that makes me like it a little bit better than Invincible is there's less characters. Not saying less characters is a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, would you say Robert Kirkman is very good at coming up with very unique characters that you would never think of ever?
Yeah.
And those certain characters, some of those characters are very easy to remember.
I can tell you this much: I would have never thought in a million years of Earthquake Gun guy or Doc Seismic.
Earthquake Glove. Yeah.
Doc Seismic. That is such a Adam West era.
It's such a comics. It's such a comics thing, and Battle Beast is the most comics.
And that's why I say, right? Invincible it's one big It's a satire and a critique of superheroes and the idea of superheroes and the idea of villains and all that stuff, right?
I would even say that even more because the main character of the series, Mark, is a huge comic book nerd.
Yeah, and what's the comic that he's always reading? Space Dog or something?
Space Dog?
I don't know. And
Yeah.
I love that the writer of Space Dog in the Invincible show is just a stand-in for Robert Kirkman, you know? Like, there's that famous panel where Mark is talking to him about his latest issue. And he says, hey, you know, I think that it's really lazy that sometimes comic book writers reuse the same panels over and over. And then it's like 6 panels in a row of just Robert Kirkman, fat guy, just sitting there staring at him. And then in the last panel, it says, nah, I don't agree with that. Like, I like that. There's definitely more humor in Invincible, which, to get back on topic of and to talk about the writing style, like you said, it's like I say all the time, and it's like I'll always say, I like stories that show character growth. I like to see a character evolve and change and mature and grow over a long period of time.
A lot of that in this
plot is important, but at the end of the day, I would rather have a story about a person growing than a lot of stuff happening to characters that I don't have any attachment to, you know? That's why it's very hard for me to get into Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is very go, plot, who's betraying who, and there's so many characters that I can't get into it, whereas Robert Kirkman takes a long time to set up his characters and show them mature and show them grow. So when you see who dies, it's okay if I spoil who dies in this, right? Because we're going to get into it.
Spoiler warning.
Whatever, spoiler warning. So when I see Omni-Man die, when I see Mark's brother die, when I see horrible stuff happen to him, right, I feel much more for him than I would in another piece of media. And it's like you said, right? If you really want to get into the plot right away, that can be a hard thing to do. Mm-hmm. But like if you let it, it's a slow burn. If you let it burn you, then like when the time finally comes, the payoff will be really well received.
I've heard that. I know you have your opinions on Stephen King, but I've heard that a lot. I've never read a Stephen King book, but I've heard that a lot about Stephen King's writings. Is that everything with him is a very slow burn with his good stuff.
Stephen King.
So like It and The Stand apparently is a very slow burn.
So I once said to you that Stephen King is a bad author. I don't really believe that. My problem with Stephen King is that he makes too much stuff, right? When Stephen King hits the nail on the head, he really hits the nail on the head.
He doesn't whole-ass one thing. He half-asses a whole bunch of things.
Exactly. Like when he takes his time and really refines stuff and really considers, all right, what is actually scary? And releases something that took him a long time to make, then it's good. But the dude pumps out like 4 books a year, something like that. Like it's insane.
Well, for me, when it comes down to storytelling, I definitely prefer a slow burn story. In all aspects. So in comics, I prefer it. In TV shows, I definitely prefer it. In pro wrestling, we saw slow burns happen, and it was fantastic.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I think it just makes it better. So on that aspect, we're gonna get into. You want to break it down? Compendium.
I mean, sure, they're laid out that way. It's easy enough. Where does the first compendium end? I don't remember. I know.
Oh, jeez.
I know that it's like right before the Cecil betrayal arc.
Screw it. Let's just talk about it in one big thing. To me, we'll talk about like key events.
Yeah, I'm not going to be looking at notes. I'm going to try to go purely based off memory here in the order that things happen. So if I forget anything, sorry, but there's a lot that happens.
So. A couple differences between the show and the comics. I think the biggest character difference between the show and the comics is the character of Amber.
Yeah, Amber's a completely different character, essentially.
I like both. I like TV show Amber more because she actually does stuff. But I feel so bad for comic book Amber.
On the topic of Amber, right, because I want to get this off my chest because even you asked me about this, right? Comic book Amber is a lot more sympathetic, right? Mm-hmm. Because she's not really much of a character. She's just a pretty face to be there with Mark and to be sad when
I think she was designed to be that. She's just like the popular girl at school that's just loving and caring. And
yeah, and that's fine and all. Yeah. But when season 1 of Invincible came out, there were so many fucking Redditor neckbeards that were, oh, Amber's the worst character. I can't believe her. Why doesn't she? Yeah. Well, but I feel like you've warmed up to her, right? So the character of Amber in the show, right? In the comic, she's Mark's girlfriend, but in the show, she's like a very, how can I phrase her? She's a
very proud, powerful.
She's a very proud,
black woman.
Confident woman. She almost has that Leslie Knope attitude from Parks and Rec. She's a very strong, confident woman, right? And a lot of people don't notice this because, like you said, there's a lot of dialogue. They set this up in like the 3rd episode when Mark is dating Amber, Adam Eve tells Mark, listen, Mark, only tell her if you're invincible if you're really serious about her, right? And then people forget about that line. And then throughout the whole show, right, Mark's got to keep going to do his superhero thing. He's got to keep leaving Amber. And then eventually Amber's like, all right, I've had enough, Mark. You keep leaving me for no reason. I'm breaking up with you. And then Mark shows up wearing the invincible suit, and he's like, hey, I'm a superhero. This is why I'm never around. And Amber's like, yeah, I know that you're a superhero, Mark, and I don't care. You keep leaving me. And so many fucking people were like, oh my gosh, Amber, how could she do this to him? Doesn't she understand that he's a superhero? And it's like, yeah. And just like Adam Eve set up, only tell her that you're a superhero if you're serious about her. She knows that Mark's a superhero. She's waiting for him to tell him. They've been dating for like a year or some shit like that, and he hasn't told her. Yeah. So in her mind, he's not serious about me. So then why would I want to stay in this relationship, right? I don't understand why that was so fucking hard for people to grasp. People need to calm down with the Amber hate in season 1. I don't think she's a bad character at all, right?
Like I said, I like her a lot now.
Yeah.
I appreciate
and you weren't an Amber hater. You were mildly annoyed by her, which I understand, but you weren't.
Oh yeah, no. I appreciate the extra character work that they do with Amber in the show. Because, like you said, she's not really that much of a character in the comics. The standard typical comic book fans are so used to that stereotype of just the pretty face who's going to fall in love with a superhero that the second that they see a strong, independent woman with actual good writing, it's a threat to them. Oh, this is a bad character. She's a huge bitch. It's like, I don't think so. But. So I think the first major story arc in the first season / first couple story arcs
is the team arc?
No, I would say the first story arc that I was like blown up, like it got uncomfortable for me, and it was just like it was one of those things where you watch it in a TV show and it's that much worse, and that was the Reaniman story arc.
Okay, yeah.
So some backstory on that.
In the comics, did that happen before the Omni-Man betrayal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Amber and Mark is Invincible. He's the main character. I guess we didn't really break that down. But if you're listening for the spoiler portion of this, you probably already know.
If you're watching the video right now, he's the guy wearing the yellow suit that I have on the video.
So anyway, they're touring a college, and I like the arc a little bit better in the show than in the comics with this one because, like you said, Amber is this is when some of the Reanimen, which are basically like android humans that get basically turned into a robot.
Yeah, the way that he explains it in the show is that he takes people and then like removes the parts of their brain that like inhibit strength exertion and like pain tolerance and just turns them into walking robot zombies or whatever.
They're meat robots essentially.
Big meaty robots.
So they're touring a college, and one of the Reanimen attacks the campus. And in the process of this happening, Mark slips away to go change into his superhero costume, and he comes back. And I think this is when Amber realizes that he's a superhero.
Well, because no, she figured it out weeks ago. You remember? That's what she says when Mark goes to her house shortly after this. She's like, "Yeah, Mark, I figured it out weeks ago."
Okay.
I mean, it's like I said, she's smart. It's not hard to figure out.
But anyway, in the comics, I don't think they really have any arguments about him leaving or anything.
No,
she worries about him.
In the comics, once Mark reveals that he's invincible, she's like, "Oh wow, that's so cool." Okay, like she understands, and then it's a slow burn from there, where like she can't handle the superhero romance lifestyle.
Yeah, but in the show, she gets mad at him for leaving and coming back as a superhero, and then she basically ditches him and goes out and parties. And for me, I think, just like as a guy, period, if you're watching this episode, you immediately feel bad for Mark, and you're immediately like, oh my god, she's gonna go out and like cheat on him.
I mean, it's not really cheating. Because
no, like that, but that's what you feel that she's going to do. She doesn't, because she's a wholesome woman who respects her body.
Interesting note though. You said you like the show version. In the show, right? She's talking to that black dude for like 10 minutes straight. And then the dude mentions that he has a girlfriend, and if you notice, Amber, her eyes widen a bit, so she was surprised by that. So maybe she was planning on doing something with him, and she was taken back.
I always took that scene as, oh yeah, no, I can't do this to Mark. That's like her coming to Jesus moment of what she's about to do.
I'm not going to say that she was or wasn't going to cheat. Just it was an interesting little tidbit that most people didn't notice. If you go back and watch that scene, her eyes widen when he says that he has a girlfriend after they've been talking out on the balcony in the starlight. Yeah. Very, very romantic scene for like 10 minutes.
But anyway, it's your standard superhero storyline where she goes out and she's partying and his best friend gets kidnapped by the guy that creates the Reaniman. But, of course, he's so worried about the girl that he's going out trying to figure out where she's at. Is she cheating on me? And he's too busy to worry about where his best friend got kidnapped to. And then he tracks him down, finds the Reaniman. Anyway, this is a long-winded way to say the reason this is important is because, for me, this is the first major story arc in the entire series that introduces the idea of how far are you willing to go for the greater good, because
this is the first arc that sets up the grand message of Invincible. You mean?
Maybe because so Cecil Stedman is a character in the show who's basically the Nick Fury of
he's white Nick Fury. That's
Amanda. He's like the perfect combination between Nick Fury and Amanda Waller, if you ask me.
Yeah, he's got the righteousness, but like outside the lawness that Nick Fury has, with the cold-hearted like necessary evil of Amanda Waller.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most perfect characters ever created.
He was one of my favorite characters.
Yeah,
I'd say that he probably was like my second or third.
Yeah, but basically after they finish up the Reaniman story arc, he comes to the campus and he's like, "Oh, this is useful technology. I got to use this," and he takes the guy that was like just an evil maniac, it's pure evil, basically, and he makes him work for the United States government. And that was the first time where me reading it's separated from, oh, this is just your standard superhero comic, to, oh, this story is trying to say something.
It's going to get into because if you think about it, right, a lot of times in comic books, right, supervillains probably would be contracted by the CIA to, Riddler is a pretty ingenious engineer. You don't think that they would want him to build them crap, right? Yeah.
But, I mean, other than the initial fight between Omni-Man and Invincible, I'd say that's the most important story arc. Yeah. You see the Reaniman come back many times in the show.
Well, because Cecil versus Mark, from that point on, is a storyline throughout the entire series. The whole idea of him and Mark trying to find balance on like where they agree on. Yeah. But since you mentioned it, Mark and Omni-Man. Okay. So since we're talking about the comics now, right? Or we're talking about the comics here.
Well, this is basically where the show ends anyway.
Exactly, so right?
We're not. I think.
As we already said, we agree that the show does it better, but we're going to talk about how the comics do it. Right? The comics do it justice. The comics are very good. It's just that the show is an 11 out of 10, right? But again, it's horrifying to see Omni-Man. In a way, the show does it better, I think, but it's a different kind of good from the comic perspective, because with the show you have the season-long buildup of tension and dread, but with the comics you have 10 whole chapters of loving and looking up to this character, only to be like, oh yeah, he's a murderer, with
only like slight hints of he's crazy.
So whereas the show fills you with dread and hopelessness, this one just fills you with anger and shock and like which is what Mark was feeling, was like, yeah.
So I appreciate, I remember how the first time I saw it, I'm like, oh, so it's basically like Superman gone bad. And then I thought about it, and then I came to the conclusion, no, it's not. Here's why. Superman Gone Bad is a heartbreaking story. Because Clark Kent is literally like a perfect human. Like, he's the most loving, caring, compassionate person. He's the inspiration for every other superhero to be. He's the best superhero, right? That's canonically like what he's supposed to be. And then you take a character like Omni-Man, who has very similar powers, but instead of his world getting blown up and he's like the last remaining survivor, his world is a bunch of basically Kryptonians that are conquerors that go to planet to planet.
I know that you've never seen Dragon Ball, but you've at least heard of it, right? It's the most famous anime of all time. Roderick Kirkman took inspiration from Dragon Ball because Dragon Ball took inspiration from Superman because that's what their planet is, right? They all have sand powers, but the planet is ruled by barbarians, right? They're warmongers. They love to fight people. And Robert Kirkman took inspiration from that in this regard, where this is an alien race of superhumans, and they're just war. They just want to fight people. They just want to conquer planets, right?
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there. Robert Kirkman definitely took inspiration from Dragon Ball for this.
If he did or didn't, it doesn't really matter.
I think it's awesome that he did because he writing is not one of Dragon Ball's biggest strong suits. It's known for the fights. And Robert gave this the story that Dragon Ball never got.
Yeah. So basically what Omni-Man wants to do is take over the world and basically adopt Earth into this Viltrumite empire. And he wants his son, who is half Viltrumite, to help him. Viltrumite is, of course, the alien race that he is.
Planet Viltrum.
Yes. And Mark, of course, is like, no, like, I'm part human, like, this is my home, my friends are here, the people that I love are here, so that's why they clash, that's why they fight.
My favorite line from the TV show, last time that I'll mention it, is because Glenn from The Walking Dead, he's the voice actor for Mark in the show, and just the raw emotion in the line delivery when he says the phrase, "I don't give a shit about Viltrum, and I don't care if I live a fucking million years. This is my home, and I won't let you destroy it," and he's got tears in his eyes. It's phenomenal. Go back and watch that scene. The voice acting off of him was really, really good there. And in the comics, he said something different. I don't
think that's the best line. I think the best line is when he was asking, he's like, "Do you even love me? Do you even love our mom?" And he's like, "I do love your mother, but she's more like a pet to me."
She's more like a pet to me. And then it just hard cuts to death. Or no, and then Mark asks her, "Are you saying that mom's life is worthless?" And then it cuts to Debbie hearing their conversation, and then Nolan just says, "In the grand scheme of things, yeah." And like she's just watching all this go down. Yeah. Horrifying. Did they do that in the comics?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, like, after the fight, Cecil tells Mark, yeah, like, there was cameras there, she heard everything, but I don't think that it cuts back to her. It's not cutting back and forth between them, I don't think.
So,
do you think that that's the best line from that?
I do. And then, of course, like, the second best line is when he's beating the shit out of him and he's about to kill him. He's like, "I can always start again. Make another kid."
Yeah, I was gonna say that, just the raw confidence when he says, "I can always start again, make another kid." What's another 17 years, Mark? And he's just beating the piss out of. This is, a lot of people have said this, right? And
J.K. Simmons is a definitive voice actor now for me. Like, he is amazing in this show.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said this about Invincible. It's funny that the show's called that, and yet Mark does nothing but lose for the most part, which, by the way, isn't true. Like, he kills Conquest, He kills Thrag with the help of his friends. He kills a lot of people, so I don't know why people are saying that. But even if it was...
Oh, no, he loses a lot in the beginning of the show.
But even if that was true, right? He's not invincible because you can't beat him. He's invincible because he won't stay down. It's his human spirit, right? It's his will to protect the ones that he loves. That's what makes him invincible.
My favorite part of the show is the ongoing... Every time that the Invincible word comes on the screen, more blood gets thrown onto it. Yeah. That's my favorite part of the show. I think that's awesome.
What are they going to do for season 2, though, of the show? Are they just going to, like, clean it? Or are they just going to... Or no, it was all blood. What if they start doing guts over it now?
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great.
We're fucking masochists, dude.
So if we're talking about the fight between Mark and Omni-Man, we have to talk about the train scene. I don't think the train scene... Does the train scene happen in the comics?
I don't remember.
If it did, I don't remember it. But this is the sole reason why I like the show better for this story arc. Yeah. Is the train scene. Do you want to talk about the train scene?
I love the train scene for... I'm gonna say something here, and I love that scene for the subtlety. And you say subtlety? What the hell are you talking about? Like he doesn't have to tell Mark, like I'm gonna show you just how worthless that human life is right here, right now. He just picks him up and then holds him in front of there and then lets it happen. And then he's sitting there looking around, looking at all the dead bodies that happened as a result of it. And like that's all that you need, right? Mm-hmm. Like the message was sent, right? These people mean nothing to us. Literally, we could kill them just by standing in fucking place. Like, why are you fighting to help them? Look at how pathetic that they are. And he's just sitting there in the rubble, looking at all the people that have died from them just floating in place.
Yeah.
And then he asks him, "How could you do this?" And he's like, "That was you. That wasn't me. I told you what needs to be done, and you didn't want to do it. So now I had to do this, right?" Yeah, the train scene. That is one of the best villain scenes of all time, right?
I 100% agree.
Hands down, one of the most just pure villainous scenes out there. The only other ones that even come close to it, I think, are. I pretty much everything that Heath Ledger did in The Dark Knight, but I'm trying to pinpoint one, Could you pinpoint one from that movie, or just?
I think Green Goblin and Spider-Man No Way Home is pretty great.
Which part though?
When he kills Aunt May, he's like, "You did this to her. You killed her. I didn't kill her."
My favorite Willem Dafoe line in that movie is when he's fighting Peter and he says, "Strong enough to have it all, too weak to take it." And I told you, right? My favorite. I love when he's up on his chest, got him in an armbar, punching him in the face, and then Willem is just fucking laughing at him the entire time, not reacting. That's a very good, just pure villain scene.
I will say, quick sidetrack. When we were talking about the entire Spider-Man series in whole, I liked the Green Goblin a lot, but I was like, no, Doc Ock's the best villain.
We should talk about the whole Spider-Man movie series as all the Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, we can definitely we'll definitely do that at some point. But to me, the Green Goblin in this movie, because like I said, I'm a diehard comics fan. To me, Dr. Octopus is always going to be Spider-Man's biggest villain.
Okay.
That's just me, because that's how he's been used in the comics for years. Green Goblin is just so evil and so happy about being evil that it's great. But
the way that it's portrayed in Invincible, it's not a happy evil. He's just
like, oh no, this is just how it is.
It's very creepy because it's not human, right? He looks human, but it's tiptoeing into that uncanny valley of it's inhuman, and he just has no reaction, just complete no emotion, no reaction. Yeah, whatever. They're all dead. Kind of like Hannibal Lecter, some other sociopaths in film, but yeah, the train scene.
So the train scene to me is it's that scene that it separates the average superhero comic.
You said it that was the turning point for the series, where they placed their foot on the ground and said, "All right, this is what we're about. This is our turning point."
Yeah, because the entire series up until then is graphic and violent, but this is uncomfortable graphic and violent.
Yeah,
and I know I use that word uncomfortable violent a lot. Obviously, if we saw this in a live action movie, it would be a hard R and just. I don't think you could do a scene like this in live action. I honestly don't.
No,
think
you absolutely could not. No,
it would be too much.
I've seen the Saw movies, and even they would not have done that. Right?
Yeah,
and the Saw movies are horrific.
But anyway, what do you think is the best story arc following this?
Yeah, so for me, I could pinpoint 6 or 7 of the most important key arcs.
The next key arc is
the Cecil betrayal arc.
Yeah, okay.
That's I stand by that. The next important, because there's little mini things that happen here and there, but for the sake of this is pivotal to the story and to the character growth. The first thing that happened, the first most important one is Omni-Man versus Mark, and then I won't call it Cecil betrayal because it's not really a betrayal. I'll say Cecil versus Invincible, whatever. That's the second most important arc, because the first arc with Mark versus Omni-Man, that places the show's foot in the ground in terms of how adult that it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
The Cecil versus Invincible arc sets in stone what the show's morality is going to be. It tells the audience. All right, we're going to be delving into the entire point of this arc, and it's an arc that takes over the entire series. But the main fighting happens here. Is that the Reanimen that Cecil got from the bad guy, right? Invincible does not believe that that's the right thing to do. He thinks that all bad guys should be in prison no matter what. That if they've done evil, then they absolutely have to pay for it. There's nothing good could come out of it. He has to be in jail. The Reanimen can't be used.
Yeah.
And Cecil says, well, the Reanimen are helping. Like, he's built thousands of them, and we're using them to stop terrorists every day.
No, he's still building them. That's the...
Yeah. Well, yeah, but like under surveillance. Like, they don't fully trust him yet, right? But yeah, he's building them. He's like, Mark, the Reanimen are doing good. Like, I'm not just gonna fucking stop doing it. Like he's a bad guy, I know, but that's why we're watching him. But he's too valuable for me not to let him use his talents, you know? They don't agree with that. Invincible tries to take them out himself, and Cecil almost fucking kills him. This is, I'd say this and the fight against Thrag are the closest that he ever comes to death. Well, this...
Obviously, the Omni-Man fight, he comes very close to death.
I don't think so. Because he quote-unquote comes close to death. Omni-Man was never going to kill him, and you know that, right? The entire time that he's fighting Mark, he's making it seem like he doesn't care. He's telling him, Mark, we have to do this. And only later in the show do you realize he's
very much holding back.
He's not telling Mark that. He's telling himself that. He's telling himself, we have to do this for Viltrum. We have to get the planet ready. He's trying to convince himself through Mark being convinced.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
He's beating him up, but he was never going to kill him. The only times where people were going to kill him and he got close to death were here, Conquest, and Thrag. And for me, you know.
You keep saying Conquest. I literally don't remember Conquest at all.
Let me think of like...
Is he? He's a Viltrumite, right?
Yes.
Is he the dude with?
Keep going.
With like gray hair.
I have this. What do you know? This came in handy. I accidentally got. So I order all of my comics on paper because I'm a fucking loser and I don't like reading ebooks. You keep going though. I'll look for Conquest in here.
So I think like this story arc is great. The whole Cecil, being very, very, very unethical in order to provide for the greater good. I like that storyline a lot, but they do a better version of it very late in the series with Robot when he takes over the world, and I like that story way better because that one...
That's Conquest. He's just this big...
okay, all right.
Yeah, just this absolute monster of a man. He's basically Thrag if Thrag had no stand as a leader and was just a warrior, essentially.
Okay.
He's
okay, now I remember it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, you can continue.
What was the original point you asked me? Yeah. So yeah, this arc sets in stone the moral and ethical dilemma of the show. Should you let bad guys go free if it means that they help out the government and the police or whatever for the greater good, right? Invincible doesn't agree. He tries to take him out and take out all of the Reanimen, and so Cecil lays pretty much all of his cards down on the table, right? He reveals that like he had a chip implanted inside of Mark's ear that damages him. He has the Reanimen beat him half to death, right? He's flying all over the place. Cecil teleports to him, just immediately starts using the thing on him again, beats him up so close to within an inch of his life that like he has no choice but to fly back to the teen team and like beg them for help, Mm-hmm. And the teen team is friends with Mark, right? So they back him up, and then Invincible and Cecil are kind of at like an impasse. So they so Invincible just tells him like, "Fucking, I'm done working for you, right? Don't ever look at me again. Don't ever contact me again." Did he have a son at this point? Oh, no. We totally skipped past the son arc. Omni-Man's new son, the brother.
Oh, that didn't happen yet.
Yes, it did, because in the Cecil arc, he tells him, do not even think about contacting my brother, asking him for help.
Okay, all right.
We totally skipped past that.
Oliver.
That's his name, thank you, Oliver. I kept on wanting to call him Dick or Tim. I'm thinking about Robin right now.
Well, we can get back to that.
Yeah. All we need to know is that, spoiler alert, Omni-Man wasn't bad. He was on an alien planet, had a brother. Mark brought the brother back to Earth after the Viltrumites came to get Omni-Man. There you go. I just summarized the whole arc.
Yeah. I think it's very important to say during the course of the end of the first compendium, Mark and Amber break up, and he gets with Adam Eve, who he's with for the rest of the entire series.
You're right. That was the ending to the first compendium, was them like getting together.
Yeah. I think the most interesting story arc, and I guess you could say is the second major story arc, is the Angstrom Levy storyline.
Angstrom Levy.
Yeah. He is basically a guy who has multiverse powers where he can go into any dimension that he wants. He hates Invincible because when he got his powers, Invincible was there. He didn't do anything to him, but he was just there. So he went insane, and he thinks that Invincible mutated him. So his whole end-all, be-all goal is to murder every single version of Mark Grayson throughout the entire multiverse. Mm-hmm. And that's when it really starts to get really hopeless. Because during this, I think this is when Eve gets pregnant for the first time?
Yes. No.
She gets pregnant multiple times in the series.
No, she doesn't.
Yes, she does.
She does? Did she abort?
She got an abortion, yeah.
For the first baby.
The first baby, she got an abortion. The second one... Oh, no, she was just fat. that's right. No, because that's a story arc, too. So Mark goes into space on a space adventure with Alan the alien, and that's when he meets up with his dad and his new brother on the alien planet. And during the course of this... Before they leave, they hook up, and Eve gets pregnant, and she has an abortion. When he comes back, she's fat because she's, like, horribly disgusted with herself for what she did.
Yeah.
And she, like, lost every ounce of respect for herself. During this is when the Angstrom Levy storyline really takes place, I think.
Yeah, and Angstrom Levy is like every comic book villain's super genius rolled into one. Like he's really fucking smart, and he can open up a portal to any dimension that he wants. Which, when you think about it,
is terrifying.
The most broken superpower ever, because it doesn't matter who you're facing, right? Right? Godzilla shows up, open up a portal, close it. He's gone. He's in a different dimension. He's gone forever. Same thing for you, right? I trap you in a desert dimension. Now you're gonna starve to death, right? Which is what he does, right? He does that to. He has a lot of plans to take over, to kill all of the Invincibles, right? At what point does he gather them all up for the Earth War arc? When was that?
That's in the third compendium.
Okay, then we'll get to that later.
Yeah,
but yeah,
the Invincible War.
Yeah, but like he's so fucking smart and so evil that like during this arc that you're talking about, right, where he's like threatening Adam Eve and all that, right?
Yeah,
Invincible beats him basically to death, right? And yet he still comes back to life because he was smart enough to like he knew that he was going to get beaten to death, so he had like a portal pre-scheduled to open up at like an exact spot where he was going to die. Yeah. So that way some surgeons from another dimension could come out and then fix him right away. Like the dude just does not want to die, and it's all because Invincible was like briefly seeing where my evil plan went wrong. I'm gonna kill all of them now.
And we once talked about what's the next step for the TV show. I think these are the two.
Levy and Cecil,
I think, are the two major story arcs that they're going to do in the second season, and then the last episode, that's when Omni-Man's gonna come back and be like, "Hey, I'm reformed now. I'm a good guy again."
Yeah, I agree with you that Omni-Man's reform should be the season 2 finale. Cliffhanger, seeing him carried away by the Viltrumites, you know, or like you said, right?
No, he's just gonna show up.
Or like Marco's on the planet, Omni-Man turns around, hi son, season 2 finale right there. That would be a really good way to do it. I'm a big fan of cliffhangers.
I am too. So yeah, a lot of throwaway things happened during this time, but at the same time, I don't really remember it that much because I read it a while ago. I'm very, very up to date with Compendium 3, but there's a lot of shit that happens between that. What are other major story arcs we could talk about before we get to that?
Compendium 2, that's the first time that we see Conquest.
Oh yeah, the Viltrumite War happens.
This has Conquest's first appearance. Because keep in mind, right, when they take Omni-Man away, I don't know the name of the bug planet that he was on, right, but Omni-Man's labeled a traitor, so the Viltrums take him away.
Thraxians? That's Thraxia, I think that's the planet.
Whatever it is, right? The Viltrumites tell Mark, all right, since your father's a traitor, you're now in charge of Earth, right? So they're periodically sending Viltrumites to Earth to check up on him and make sure that he's like doing the right thing. And one of those guys is Conquest, and that's where we like truly. That's the first time that we truly get to see just how strong that Adam Eve really is. I think.
Yeah, she's really strong. She's not as strong as, this later on in the series, but.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. She has a power where she can essentially stop herself from dying.
Well, her whole power, it's so fucking broken when you think about it. Her power is that she rearranges atoms to be whatever she wants.
Yeah.
Rearrange that desk into a nuke. And then like you said, right, she's dying, rearrange the broken atoms in her body to be fine again, right? And she does
that. She's essentially immortal.
Except for like space. For some reason, like space kills her, you know? Because you remember there's the Flagians.
Yeah, you're right.
There's like the alien parasites or whatever, and like they're fighting them in space, and like she almost dies from that.
Man, so much stuff happens in this comic.
There,
So in the first,
I said, there's a lot that happens. If we miss stuff, I'm sorry.
So in the first story arc, there's a throwaway battle where there's this group of aliens that come and invade Earth, and time is different where they're from versus on Earth. So when they show up on Earth, they can only be there for like 7 minutes, and then they'll all die because they age rapidly. And it was just like a throwaway adventure in the first couple episodes. And then later on in, I think, this compendium, Robot and Monster Girl, who are children essentially at this, they're in children. Their bodies are kids, but they're actually like in their 30s.
Yes.
They get stranded in this other dimension, other planet, and they essentially grow up there. They're there for thousands of years, and they conquer the entire planet and get married and have kids and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And then they come back, and only like 2 months has passed.
They've been there for
they've been there for thousands of years, and they're fully aged adults now. And that's a big thing that happens. And I think that's
the show's
in the grand scheme of things, that was like a throwaway story arc, but that was also a way to there's a lot of common conveniences in this series, right? So quick comparison to this, okay? So Brian Michael Bendis was the guy who wrote Ultimate Spider-Man. All right? It's looked at as one of the best Spider-Man runs in history. He always wanted to write Superman, so he made a contract to work with DC Comics, and under this contract, he got creative control over every single Superman book. So Man of Steel, Superman, Man of Tomorrow, like all of them. Action Comics, all of them, okay? And he didn't like the idea of Superman having a son. He didn't. He's like, it's boring. Even though that was literally the best thing that DC was doing for years was Superman and his family.
Yeah.
Because he's balancing being a father with, like when Invincible has a kid, like it makes the story just better. Okay? There's a lot of conveniences that maybe they pulled from Invincible that they pull in DC Comics where John Kent just like goes away with Zor-El for a while, and then when he comes back, he's a fully aged adult, and they do that many times in Invincible.
Yeah,
and it's just like a convenience thing. That's one of my pet peeves in comics. I think he just didn't want to write children dialogue, even though I would say Robert Kirkman is one of the only people in comics that can write interesting children dialogue. But he ages up. Anybody that's a kid in this entire series essentially gets aged up.
Yeah.
He ages up Oliver, he ages up all of Invincible's kids, he ages up Robot and Monster Girl.
All of Thrag's kids.
Yeah, they all get aged up throughout the entire course of the show. But the whole Robot and Monster Girl getting stranded in this alternate dimension, that comes in play in the last major story arc of the entire show.
I will say, of all the villains in Invincible, I'd say that Robot's inevitable defeat was the most satisfying for me. I felt so bad for Mark and the group against Robot.
Oh yeah,
it's because they lost.
So if Marvel would have done Ultron like this, that would have been so great to see. Yeah, but they didn't. So we get
the reason why it's so satisfying to see him is because like Robot embodies every boss you've ever had that like you would love to punch in the face, but you just can't. Like you can't.
So Robot's mindset in this, how we always talk about like comic book villains, I would say Doctor Doom is the greatest superhero villain ever created. Yeah. This is essentially what Doctor Doom's plan is. He's like, the world is doomed unless I am in control, complete control of everything. So like his whole entire, he's not like just pure evil, like he is, but he's not at the same time. Like he's a dictator and he's really good at it and he's fair to his people and everybody likes him like in his home country. So if he would essentially take over the world, it would essentially be like what Robot did. And then the few people who were revolting for the right reasons would be perceived by the entire rest of the world as villains. And that's a very scary thing to think about.
Yeah,
When
because it's pretty much how.
that's essentially how, like, you know, picture like 1945 Germany with the Hitler Youth, and there was that one kid that grew up in a home where they thought that everything that they did was wrong, and going to school and getting bullied because you think that Jews deserve to live, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very similar comparison.
Yeah. No, you're right. And Invincible does that with a lot of its storylines. Or I'm sorry, that's not. This is a good example to say that, like, Invincible doesn't really have any throwaway storylines. Like
No, so you think they're throwaway when you're reading them,
Like
but
with-
they always come back.
like with Doc Seismic. With Doc Seismic and his fucking earthquake guns, you think oh okay, that's just like a one-off joke villain, and like no, he leads a fucking invasion of Earth with like the molten primordial beings that lived on Earth before, and that's a big arc too. You think that what's their name? The two blue guys?
The Mahler twins.
You think that the Mahler twins are just like a one-off thing, but nope, they're a thing throughout the whole series until they die.
They're pivotal from,
and they come back, but whatever. Every throwaway thing in this show, for the most part, comes back in some capacity until about halfway through the final compendium. It's just pure Thrag and then Robot, and then it feels very conclusive. But pretty much everything comes back: the alien parasites, Robot, Rex. What are they called? Like you said, the Flagians,
the Flaxians.
Yeah, the Flaxians come back all the way up until Compendium 2. Like
so, I will say this. I think if I would have read it issue to issue as it was coming out, I would like it a lot more. And here's why. Complete story arcs are wrapped up, and then as soon as they're wrapped up, another big problem happens, and it's very unnerving to read back to back to back to back to back. Yeah. So, for instance, they do the whole in the third compendium. They do the whole war with Thrag, and then as soon as Thrag is done, he fights Robot, and then that's a whole story arc. And then as soon as that's done, they do I guess after that there's not really a big example.
I don't know if I'd really call Invincible special in that regard, though. That's just the law of stories.
It's the law of stories.
It's
enemy comic in general, but like that's the biggest takeaway I got is, oh, things never stop. It's over and over and over. So if I would have read it as it came out, you have weeks in time.
Well, if I read it as it came out, it would have been really cool for me to be like, oh, hey, look, the Flagians, those dudes, it's those dudes that I read about 2 years ago. They're back again. Whereas as opposed to reading about them 20 minutes ago, you know.
Yeah. You know, so
I think we left off on the Conquest arc, right? Or like Conquest.
So we'll talk a little bit about the Viltrumite War.
Yeah. So Conquest coming to Earth, that pretty much sets up the Viltrumite War, where Alan, who you mentioned earlier. Alan's kind of like the top-notch space ranger for the Galactic Senate, right, in this universe or whatever. Yeah. And by the way, another reason why I think that Robert Kirkman was inspired by Dragon Ball, Alan literally has Dragon Ball powers, where like the Saiyans, one of the Saiyans are the Viltrumites from Dragon Ball. One of their powers is that the more that they get beat up and almost die in battle, if they heal from that, the stronger that they get. That's literally Alan's powers, right? Yeah. Like, the more that he almost dies, the stronger he gets. Just another little tidbit. I really think that Kirkman likes Dragon Ball. But Alan is, again, set up as like a one-off joke character, and then he eventually becomes the leader of the entire Galactic Senate, and then leads the war against the Viltrumites on their home planet, right?
Yeah. So where to start with this? So you get to see, you hear a lot throughout the course of the story that Viltrumites are very violent, and they're basically Kryptonians. Like, they can't shoot lasers out of their eyes or anything. They can't breathe in space. They just hold their breath for years.
No, it's just super strength, super speed, flying.
But you hear a lot about how well trained they are, and then the Viltrumite War happens, and they are so fucking violent.
Yeah.
They basically bred all of the weak out of their entire race.
They're Spartans. They're Greek Spartans. They killed all the weak, only one of the strong.
Yeah. I think Thrag is the only Viltrumite that actively scared the shit out of me reading.
Because he's very cold. He doesn't show a lot of emotion.
Well, I'm pretty sure he's stronger than. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's the strongest Viltrumite.
He killed Battle Beast. He is the strong. He.
I don't know how he's the strongest though. That's the thing that I don't understand.
Because he just trained the hardest. It was as simple as that. They were talking.
Oh, that's right. That's how powers work in here. Like you can get stronger by just working.
Well, because you remember he's talking about how he was the greatest warrior. That was why he was sent personally on the mission to search for the true king of Viltrum, and he searched for like 100 years or something, and he couldn't find him, so he just took up the mantle. But yeah, Thrag is a little bit stronger than Battle Beast, who is the strongest or whatever the fuck. Thrag's the only way that Mark could kill Thrag was with the help of all of his friends and by pummeling him into the sun.
Yeah,
that was the only way that he was able to die.
And then he almost died because of it too,
which we'll get into. Later.
So yeah, the Viltrumite War happens. It's all of the Viltrumites versus a alliance between Alan the Alien. Isn't like Space Racer in it at this point too?
Yes, Space Racer.
Space Racer is one of the coolest characters too.
Yes.
He's basically Lobo, but
Battle Beast is there.
Yeah. Battle Beast is there, and Battle Beast is another character that you think, oh, he's just like a throwaway character in the first couple episodes of the show and of the first compendium, and then when he comes back, you're just like, oh yes, he's back. Because Battle Beast's entire existence is defined by finding a worthy opponent to kill him.
He's kind of like One Punch Man if One Punch Man was just a fucking blood hungry monster. He's convinced that his only purpose in life is finding somebody who can give him like an actual decent fight, somebody who can actually hurt him.
Yeah.
So that's all that he wants 24/7 is just you. Can you provide me with conflict? No? Well then go away. You're a waste of my time. Even though he could rip his head off and nobody could stop him. That's all that he cares about is fighting people.
Yeah. That's basically how he acts in the first time you see him. He's just like, this fight is beneath me. He basically comes and just immediately kills everybody. He's like, this fight is beneath me. I must leave.
One of my favorite Reddit posts of all time was somebody said, Metalhead hiring Battle Beast in season 1 of Invincible is like Kingpin hiring Thanos for like a one-off fight with fucking Green
Spider-Man,
Arrow.
yeah.
So, yeah, just a one-off fight. It's like Thanos being in season 1 hired by Kingpin, which is awesome.
So yeah, during the course of the Viltrumite War, you learn that the I guess you could call it the royal family just so happens to be the Grayson family.
Yeah.
So Nolan is the rightful emperor of the entire Viltrumites.
Yes.
And I thought that was kind of cool. Thought it was very cliche. I thought it would have been way cooler if it was like just some random character.
Well, I will say, it would have been cool if it was that one chick, I think.
Anissa?
Yeah, I think that it would have been.
That would have been cool. It would have been terrifying, though.
We'll get into that.
Ugh.
Before you get into that, though, because I wanted to mention 3 things about the Viltrumite War that were cool. I liked how there was more to the story than it appeared at first, right? Because at first we think, oh, the Viltrumites only send one person to each planet because they don't have the numbers anymore to conquer all the planets, right? And you find out, no, there was an old Viltrumite war, and in that war, the coalition of planets came up with a virus that wiped out 99.9% of Viltrumites until now there's only 50, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Viltrumites' whole mission, they're going out one planet at a time looking for the closest DNA match to humanly possible to try to make the purest Viltrumites possible. They want to repopulate. Just so happens that that's Earth. Human DNA is 99.8 whatever compatible with Viltrumites, which is why they want it so bad. That's why Nolan is. That's why
Mark and all of the other Viltrumite children on Earth are so powerful.
Exactly. So there's that. And I like this. When they inevitably go to the Viltrumite planet, there's a ring around the planet.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a ring made of all of the dead bodies of the Viltrumites who died from the virus. It's like a little memorial to them. I thought that was really...
it's pretty savage.
Like they're war-hungry monsters, but that's really sad, right? And C, they blow up the fucking planet by flying through it.
Oh, yeah.
Need I say more? Just Nolan, Mark, and
Alan, right?
Yes, and Alan, they all fly through the planet at top speed, and that blows it up. I don't need to say it. I don't need to explain why I like that. That's just badass.
Oh, and by the way, if you're listening and you're not really understanding any of this stuff, we're we're not really trying to recap the entire story. We're just basically having a conversation with each other about Invincible.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna forget stuff. And keep in mind this is gonna be a 2-parter, so if we forget anything,
Technically
we'll
a
talk.
3-parter because we're doing this, then Walking Dead, then we're gonna
compare the two.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll if we miss something now, we'll listen back to it and maybe talk about it in a future episode. But
Yeah.
I like how every single Viltrumite man has a mustache.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was just like if that was like planned from the beginning, or just because Nolan had a mustache in the first, he's like, well, what do all these people look like? Oh, well, they all have mustaches.
No, it is cool. Yeah, I do like that.
And then you find out later on that the mustache is a sign of them being warriors.
Here's a question though: who has the best mustache? I think that Thrag does. He has Thrag has like a Ron Swanson mustache.
Oh fuck no!
Who was the best mustache?
Nolan, when he becomes emperor and he's got like the Fu Manchu.
It's been a while since I've read it. I wasn't taking note of their mustaches back then. Sorry.
Yeah, he's got the Fu Manchu. Like when he dies, he's got
Emperor Nolan.
Yeah.
Which so following the Viltrumite War, right? Their planet's blown up. That's I really like how they did this. Again, right? The whole moral of the show is ethics, right? The ethics of being a superhero, the ethics of doing this, doing that, morality, the morality of comic books and superheroes. And so after blowing up the planet, the Viltrumites then go to Earth and they tell Mark, listen, men, we're not going to blow up the planet. All that we want is a place to stay because you blew up our home planet. We just want to stay here and reproduce. And then Mark's like, really? Like, you guys really do you guys really think that I'm gonna let you stay here and build up your army back? And Thrag's like, you don't have a fucking choice, dude. It's either that or we're gonna blow up your planet. Yeah. And there you go. There's nothing that they can do. Literally, one Viltrumite could just fly through the planet core and blow it up if they wanted. They have no choice but to let their greatest enemy, whose home planet that they just blew up, stay on their home planet and reproduce an army for them.
And I can't remember do they tell Cecil Stedman this, or I feel like they hid it from him.
No, they didn't tell him.
Yeah,
but I think that no, they didn't tell Cecil. He was pretty pissed off. He was like, "So Mark, you just weren't going to tell me this?" And he's like, "Well, if I did, like, what would you have done? Probably nothing, right? Like, what could you have done?" Yeah.
And then of course during this, that's when we find out that Nolan is the heir. And Thrag tries to assassinate him.
That's right, because Alan tries to use the virus on Earth to get rid of the Viltrumites, and then you see Thrag and Mark fighting together against Alan, who's now the bad guy, and you're like, what the fuck? Alan's a bad guy now, and Oliver's like on Thrag's side, or Oliver's on Alan's side. My bad.
Yeah,
really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff in this show where everybody who is a hero is a villain at some point in this, except for Eve, I think.
No, Eve
is the only pure babyface the entire.
She's the only babyface.
I'm sorry, I'm so used to using wrestling terms. She's the only pure good person in the entire show.
What would Eve's theme song be? The wrestler.
You can look, but you can't touch. I don't know.
You can.
The Bella Twins.
Do. All right. So now I think we're on to Compendium 3.
I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? I know.
No, because all that really happens in Compendium 2 is setting up the Viltrumite War, setting up that they're on Earth.
Nolan basically exiles Thrag. He doesn't kill him when he definitely could, but he doesn't. He exiles him, and he takes over as the emperor of the Viltrumites, and they basically live on Earth in peace. And just like what happened with Nolan, when through the course of them living on Earth, they grow to love Earth. They fall in love. They all have families, and they are 100% loyal to the Emperor.
Yeah,
which is a cool thing to see in the final battles.
Yeah,
but Nolan is also very much, I need to protect my people, and he won't ever engage in any sort of conflicts. He's very hesitant on getting involved in any wars.
Because you think about it, because he's lived with them for thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
They are kind of his family, too.
Yeah. So, into Compendium 3, where we're in the process of the Viltrumites essentially repopulating. And Eve gets pregnant with Tara.
Yes.
Which is Invincible's daughter. And this is one of those story arcs where he just has like the worst day ever. Everything gets worse and worse and worse. He goes away, and
is this a Levy arc or
no, I can't remember.
or is this the well?
I can't remember. He goes away for a while, and then he comes back, and Eve's got a baby there.
Because no,
and
it's Levy. I remember. He goes out of his way to go and hunt for Levy.
Yeah, you're right.
On the off chance that he ever comes back, and Eve tells him, "Listen, like I understand stopping him in the moment, but like as far as we know, he's dead. So like you're gonna go out of your way to try to stop a guy that's not harming us right now. What if you don't come back?" And then he doesn't. And then
he comes back, and his daughter's born. And then Eve is like, she wants nothing to do with him because he wasn't there, and he's obsessed. And then as soon as he leaves, Robot takes over the world. Yeah. But like he does it in like the most badass way ever that nobody can stop him. And then after that happens, he gets raped by one of the Viltrumites because on Viltrum, the dominant choose their mates, and I'm guessing the dominant are mostly the women. Like the women go around and they find a male to mate with.
Apparently,
and she wants to mate with Mark because she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to mate with any of these animals.
When I was like halfway through reading Compendium 2, I thought to myself, "Man, what am I gonna do with the second Compendium? Oh, I know. I have a friend who has kids. Maybe I'll give it to him." And then I read Compendium 3 with the rape scene, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I won't let his kids read this. I don't know. It's a very like point. Yeah, it's a rape scene.
It's a full on rape scene where she rapes him in order to get pregnant.
To go back to what you said, because I want to talk about it, the way that Robot takes over the Earth, it's so helpless. Which is why his defeat is so satisfying. It's just the most, because like he kills Cecil, right? So
yeah, he does.
So to go back to what you were talking about with they're gone for thousands of years, right?
When Invincible goes to hunt down Angstrom Levy, Robot is the one that takes him there, but Robot is also the one that strands him there.
Yes, because it's revealed that in the thousands of years that Robot was in the Flagian's dimension with Monster Girl, he became a fucking ruthless dictator who was like Cecil on steroids, right? Greater good above all else. Mm-hmm. He was a ruthless, horrible dictator, and him and I said Battle Beast. What's her name? Monster Girl. Mm-hmm. Robot and Battle Beast together. No, yeah, and him and Monster Girl like break up while they're there. There so much shit happens. There could almost be an entire season's worth of content just from them in the Flagian dimension. But to summarize it, he becomes a dictator. Monster Girl is like on the absolute last fucking leg of being with him, right? Because he's a monster, right? And yeah, he leaves Invincible stranded in that universe because he's like, well, like fucking, you're just like back when Cecil told you all the horrible shit that he was doing, you tried to kill him. So why would I take you back when I'm planning like the exact same thing but only worse? Yeah. Strands him there, goes back, takes over the entire government. Right? Is that what happens?
He strategically does it where I don't. This is the one part that I didn't really understand.
What do you mean?
Like, I got that he was an egotistical character that was like, the world would be better if I was fully in control of everything.
Yeah.
But the way that he went about taking over the world...
He only killed Cecil when Invincible told him. That's right. Because Invincible finally finds a way back, tells Cecil that Robot's stranded in there, and he's like, Mark, what are you talking about? I didn't do anything. And then Invincible convinces Cecil, and then Cecil's like, yeah, that's right. Didn't you, like, just ask me for permission to the Earth's power grid or whatever? And he's like, all right, fine, I guess I have to kill you. Kill Cecil, and then it's revealed that, like, Robot has upgraded his robot design to be perfect, where, like, it takes, like, 10 superheroes to take down one, and he's got, like, he's got, like, 100,000 he's got millions of them, all positioned around the globe, right? And he uses them to overthrow every dictator, every government, everything.
All at once.
Gets the world's nuclear launch codes, and he's like, now listen, Invincible, calm down, right? Because yeah, we could totally fight, but like then all these guys are gonna kill you, and like I have the Earth's power grid on, I have the button to blow everything up, so just hear me out, right? And the president hands over control to him, and then he's just in control, and nobody can do anything to stop him, right? Mark tries going to his dad for help, and his dad's like, yeah, I'm not touching that with a fucking 10-foot pole. It's not happening. Yeah. Nobody wants to do anything about it, and he's just in charge now. And superheroes kind of become irrelevant for a little while, right? Like, they show many...
He succeeds. He makes the Earth essentially perfect.
Yes. like it's shown many times superheroes try to stop villains, and then you'll see robots. I'm gonna call him Rex.
His drones.
He changes his name to Rex, right? Rex's drones come in, stop the bad guy, and they go, "Hey man, thanks for the help, but stand aside, we got it." And the superheroes are just like, "Well, shit, what do I do now?" You know?
Yeah.
And so for the last part, Earth is perfect. Nothing's wrong with it. Totally.
Nothing's wrong with it, but this is back to the helpless part. The people of Earth are 100% okay with it.
Yeah, exactly.
They're 100% okay with it, but the only people that aren't okay with it are all of the superheroes that know what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when the ethics conversation went on in my head. The overarching story of this entire series is how far is too far to make the Earth a better place. It's the entire point. Is absolute freedom good? Because if you have absolute freedom, crime is going to be crazy. If you have absolute control, you can give the illusion that people have freedom.
And I know that we're going to skip over a lot of story by me jumping to this, but this was probably my favorite arc in the whole show. Because it goes back to what you're talking about. Let's talk about the well. You know what the well is?
Oh, yeah.
The well is my favorite arc in the whole story. And to summarize it, Mark's on an alien planet, right? At a certain point, Thrag starts doing evil shit again. So the Coalition is searching for Thrag. So Mark goes to this planet. What's it?
So Oliver, who is Invincible's brother, is part Viltrumite and part I don't know what race of alien it is, but they look like ants essentially.
Yeah.
And they age very fast.
And they reproduce.
And they reproduce very fast too. So Thrag goes to that planet and basically fucks the entire population and has 1 million children that age very, very rapidly.
Yes.
And that's how he amasses an entire army of Viltrumites very, very quickly.
Yes.
But during this...
Yes, so Mark goes to, and keep in mind the whole time that I'm telling you this, the argument of ethics and morality, keeping the Earth safe, right? Mark goes to a planet, falls down a well in a cave, and then when he wakes up, he's back at the beginning of the series. Like panel 1, he's back on the toilet reading comics, no superpowers. And it's revealed, and since Mark knows everything that's going to happen, he's able to prevent millions of deaths, right? He knows where Doc Seismic is going to show up. He knows where natural disasters are going to happen. So he tells Cecil, hey,
he's able to stop Omni-Man from turning against him.
That's right. He's able to stop Omni-Man from doing all the horrible shit that he does and being exiled from the planet. He's able to fix every wrong in the entire series, right? And nothing about it is explained. He's just like, well, this is my life now, I guess. And he's not able to get with Adam Eve though, because
he's able to stop Robot from turning evil and taking over the world too, because he tells him.
That's right. He's able to fix every wrong in the entire show, except he doesn't have his wife, and he doesn't
or his daughter,
and he doesn't have his daughter. And then finally, he's sitting on the bed, just depressed out of his mind, having saved billions of lives. And then I love that these are never explained. It's just these unidentified celestial cosmic deities, right? Mark's all sad, and the deities tell him, "But Mark, aren't you happy with all of the lives that you saved? You know?" And he's like, "Who is that?" And then they show up, and they're like these weird fucking tendrils of light or whatever. I don't know. Just imagine whatever cosmic horror that you can think of, right? That's what they look like, right? Biblically accurate angels, whatever. And they tell him, "Listen, Mark, you are the chosen one, set to fix the universe and right. There's been too many wrongs in the universe as of late. Balance needs to be kept. You have to fix it. You're the chosen one.
Yeah.
But we can't force you to do it. So you can either continue on this path, or we can send you back." And Mark chooses to go back because despite the insurmountable good that he has done for the universe, despite all of the lives that he's saved, all of the good that he's done, he can't live without his wife and daughter, right?
You know what I was thinking about when I was reading this part? I was thinking, man, Avengers Endgame is terrible. And here's why.
Okay.
Yes.
That's going to raise some eyebrows.
The final battle was great. That's what people remember the movie for. It's like you get a little segue tour throughout the entire MCU because they go back in time. The way that they time travel in this movie sucks.
In Endgame,
because there's zero risk.
Multiverse theory.
At all. There's zero risk. Okay, well we can go back and we can go back in time and change everything, but everything that happened in the last 5 years has to stay because I can't lose my daughter. And this is why I've talked to a lot of people about this. You know that scene where Black Widow dies on on Vormir.
It's my favorite scene.
It's your favorite scene.
Because there's consequences.
There's consequences. I don't think that should have happened. I think... Because here's the thing, right? Nobody, except for Thanos and Gamora, know what you have to do to get the Soul Stone. They just know that it's there. So if Tony Stark goes there by himself, or he thinks he's by himself, not knowing that he needs to sacrifice what he loves the most to get the Soul Stone.
You think they should have had to sacrifice his daughter?
I think his daughter, because it's established earlier that his daughter likes to get into his stuff and like, you know what I mean? If she like just snuck on board the ship, and she was there.
I'm going to stop you right here. I don't agree with any of this you're talking
I
about.
100% think it's the better thing.
I don't at all.
It's better because there is zero consequence in that entire movie.
Iron Man dies.
Yeah, he dies. Who cares?
Captain America's gone.
Who cares? There's zero consequence
What
in
do
the
you
time
mean,
travel.
who cares?
They get everything. His daughter gets to live. Captain America stays back by choice.
Listen.
Like, there's no consequence.
Listen, I completely do agree with you. I don't like Endgame. That's not true. I like it because of the fight, you know, but I don't think that Endgame is the best Marvel movie. I don't think that it's even in like the top 5 best Marvel movies. I agree with you. It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite, but I think that it was fine.
Here's where I'm going with this. You either have his daughter sacrifice herself because she knows that in the real world, like, she's not supposed to exist, which is an awesome, because that basically says, oh, his daughter's better than he is. It sets Iron Man back because Iron Man is not supposed to be just like this strategic genius. He's supposed to be a broken down alcoholic shell of a man. That's who he is. That's his core.
How does this lead to my Invincible?
Okay. In Invincible, Mark chooses his family and his daughter over saving the entire world.
And setting balance right in the universe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't do that with Tony Stark. They should have done the same thing with Tony Stark. It's like where he says, yeah, no, being a hero is bullshit. This is all stupid. It's all worthless. I'm not willing to risk anything for my family. Like, my family is the only thing I care about.
You brought up a good point there. Yeah, right. Like, again,
that becomes the new tagline of the series, that being a hero is bullshit.
Yeah, the whole ethics of the show is or the whole message of the show. It's a critique of superheroes. You start off seeing Mark be the generic superhero, fights the bad guy, gets the pretty girl, and then you see the evolved form. He's working for the government to help him track down the bad guys. And then, the government is helping the bad guys, or the government's letting the bad guys help them. That's ethically wrong. They're bad guys. They belong in jail. And then you see that evolve into okay, well, maybe the bad guys can do some good. To okay, maybe the bad guys need to be in charge. To, you know what? Fuck it. I don't want to be a superhero. The only thing that gives you purpose and joy in life is being with your friends and family and doing that. Yeah. So I choose my family over doing that because fuck being a superhero.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the grand arc of how this series views being a superhero is fuck being a superhero. Just be with the people that you love, right? It's all that.
Yeah, matters. But I like how Mark essentially becomes Superman in the end, but he's Superman if Superman was ruling Krypton.
Yes.
He rules like Superman, like hell. He's like, there's no need for death. Like nobody around here in the universe can kill us because we're not going to kill each other. He's like, we're just gonna go and make every world better and let them be free and spill zero blood. Yeah. Like my favorite. The ending for me is actually pretty emotional. So yeah, The Well's my favorite arc just because I love that Mark did that, and like when you read it out loud, right? Mark chose his wife and daughter over billions and billions of dead people, right? Like, obviously the emotional center of you is like, yeah, good call, but like there's that small nugget in the back of your head that's like, well, maybe, you know. See, this is not to get political with it, okay? But have you ever seen that? What's the YouTube channel? I think the YouTube channel is called Jubilee, and it's basically they have people who disagree on opposite sides of a room, and they ask them a question. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So they had an episode that was like Middle Ground. That's the name of the Middle Ground. Yeah. So they had a bunch of liberals that were anti-war, and then they had a bunch of like veterans. Okay. And one of the questions was, "I would die for world peace." And all of the people who were like anti-war came and sat in the chair, and none of the veterans did. And that really got me thinking. And all of them were like, "Of course I would die for world peace. If it meant me, like I don't get to live, but everybody else, like one life versus everybody, like of course." So all the people who are anti-killing someone were like 100% no, kill me. And all the veterans were like, well, world peace is like kind of impossible, but at the same time, like I'm selfish. Like I would want to live in a world with world peace. Why would I sacrifice myself? I don't matter that much in order for anything to change, essentially. He's like, so I bring that up to say, like, I think literally every single person on the entire planet would have done the exact same thing that Mark did.
Yeah.
Every single one. Anybody that says I would die for world peace or I would die for a perfect world is an idiot. And I think that's a really fun debate to have.
I don't think that you're really human, though.
What do you mean?
Well, just because humans are all emotion, you know? Like, I don't know. Like, if you value... Like, I don't know what I'm getting at here. It doesn't sit right with me that a person would say... Like I would rather the people that I know and love and that matter to me in life, I would rather them die over these billions of people that I don't know. And again, right, when you think about it, well, yeah, that makes sense. Those are more people, and it's like, yeah, but like those aren't your people, you know.
So like, all right,
people are gonna die no matter what, right? Life sucks. People are gonna die eventually. So the fact that you would go out of your way to not keep those that are personal to you around.
So we're both military guys. So
yes.
The main difference between you and me is you've never deployed. I've been to war. I've done all that stuff.
Yes.
Okay. And we've had this conversation, and I think it's apropos to talk about this during this portion of the review, because, I mean, when you go overseas, you're in a foreign country that you don't really know that much about. Any of you could die at any moment, and none of you really care about the greater good in that.
All you care about is the guy next to
you. All
you.
you care about is your family back home and the guys to the right and left of you. And that's why I relate so much with what Mark does, because and I don't care who is, like, George Washington could have been exactly like this. And I think he was. He's like, the greater good, yeah, we'll die for freedom. Like, that's all great and everything.
If you ask... Sorry, you keep going.
No, it's like, you hear all these amazing war stories about people dying for the cause. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because it absolutely does. But if you were given a choice, I think everybody would pick what they love, what's personal to them, over what's best for the entire world if they don't get what they... Because people are selfish in general. But,
I haven't been deployed by you, you're right. But yeah. that is my life philosophy for the most part. You ask anybody who knows me, and I'm pretty sure that I've told you it before, but like my life philosophy is that everything comes down to perspective, right? Mm-hmm. The only thing that we as humans are able to perceive is what's going on in our mind. You know, the people that we meet, the experiences that we have, right? You can debate religion all that you want until the end of time, but at the end of the day, you don't know 100%. You can never know 100%.
At the end of the day, it's either real or it's not.
I'm not. This isn't a religion debate. I'm saying that to say that at the end of the day, the only thing that you know 100% for sure is real and matters to you is what goes on in your life and inside your head, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, the people in your life that you care for, they should matter to you the most. So yeah, the whole idea of I'll forget them. I want these people that I've never met before. It doesn't feel human to me. That's all that I'll say about it.
So. But I know we're kind of getting off topic, but at the same time we're not. Because
that's why it's my favorite arc, because it reinforces that philosophy.
Well, to compare Invincible with other superheroes, we can compare it to Superman, because I think that's Superman would not have done that.
No.
Superman would sacrifice everything that he loves, because he's done it before, for the world to be a better place.
Because that's what a superhero
Because he is Superman, and that is what is right, and he always does the right thing. Okay. Then you take Spider-Man. They did the same story arc in No Way Home, just not to this degree, where Peter Parker loses everybody that he loves in order to save the world, to save the multiverse. And he chooses the greater good. And a lot of people were pissed off at the end of that movie because of what he did. I don't think that's realistic. What Mark does is realistic.
Yeah.
And that's why I love this part of the story. And it makes it even more satisfying because of how the story ends.
It's my favorite arc, but is it your favorite arc? If not, then what is your favorite arc? The end?
Oh, geez. There's a lot of arcs. I consider, like, the final battle and everything with Robot and Thrag to be one story arc.
Yeah. For me,
So
for me, the quote unquote finale arc is Thrag shows up to Earth, they're fighting them, and then everything from there up until the finale. That's an arc for me.
Yeah, but because this story arc happens before all of that happens, so like for me to sit here and think about what was going through Mark's mind when he was fighting all of the Viltrumites, and his dad got killed by Thrag, and everything like that. If you think for a second he thought, man, I made the wrong decision. I feel like he didn't.
You don't think that he did?
I feel like for
it's what Nolan would have wanted.
No, I feel like so. What I'm saying is, when he was fighting Thrag, and all of the people were dying, do you think he ever thought to himself, "Man, I made a mistake. I should have just." Yeah, when Robot and all that stuff, you think he thought for a second, like, "Man, I made a mistake. I should have chose the world over my family."
No,
I don't think he did either.
No, it's his family.
Exactly,
that's the most important thing to him, as it should be.
Is it my favorite story arc? I'll tell you this: it's the most relatable story arc in the entire story,
and that's why I like it.
And
everything goes back to what I was saying: humanizing, characterization.
It's not the most satisfying. The most satisfying story arc I've ever seen in the history of anything in comics, and maybe The Walking Dead ending is better. I haven't read it yet, but
yes,
we can talk about it later.
Yeah.
But this is, up until today, this is the most satisfying ending to a comic book I've ever seen in my entire life, and I've read a shit ton of comics.
I mean, it's Robert Kirkman, so no spoilers, but kind of spoiler. Pretty similar. Well, not in terms of story, but like the vibes that it leaves you with, I'd say are kind of similar. Maybe a little bit more conclusive in The Walking Dead, but if you like the ending to this one, then you'll love The Walking Dead ending.
So many times in comics, and I think this is why this works as Image Comics publishing versus in DC. They wouldn't have been able to do this in DC or Marvel, because in a world where continuity rolls on and characters get reboots, you wouldn't be able to have a definitive ending like this. No. I think that's why I like it so much more than because
you actually get an ending.
Yeah. So like, I'm pretty sure the only
what do you like so much about the ending?
The only story that you get a definitive ending to in comics up until this point was, like, I'm pretty sure, Astonishing X-Men. You don't get very many definitive beginning, middles, and ending in comics, because, like I said, the continuity rolls on. A new creative team is going to come in. You can't have a definitive ending because it's going to get undone. You know what I mean?
I'm glad that you said beginning, middle, and end, because when you look at the three compendiums like that, that is what it is.
It's a beginning, a middle, and end.
When you look at the storylines, the first compendium is the beginning of Mark's superhero life. It's very innocent, childlike, simple. The middle is like the teenage years. It's very chaotic. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of shifts in what's right, what's wrong, and then the third compendium is he's an adult now. He's figured out what his code is. And now all that's left is the final battle. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Here's why I like the final arc a lot, and why it's so satisfying to me. Mark gets the ultimate power basically in the universe when you think about it.
What's that?
He becomes the emperor of the Viltrumites, the most powerful beings in the universe. He is in charge of all of them. Mm-hmm. Okay? He makes the decision to pull all of the Viltrumites off world, except for the ones who want to stay, which are his son and Anissa's daughter. Yes. Those are the only two Viltrumites that stay on Earth.
Anissa's the girl that rapes him, by the way. She's good at this point.
She becomes a good guy. But he decides to pull all the Viltrumites off world because either they stay on Earth and overpopulate, and then the human race essentially becomes irrelevant, or they leave and Earth can be what it's meant to be, is the home of humans. And one or two stay back to be superheroes and save the day, and that's what his son does. His son eventually becomes invincible, right? Takes up the mantle.
It was bulletproof for a while, but his son took it.
But the satisfying part to me is you see a time jump, and you see both of his kids grow up, and you see what he does through the universe. And my favorite part of it isn't like the end panel. The end panel is pretty great when he's like, my dad once asked me, what do I do in the next 500 years? And then you realize it's been 500 years since the first Omni-Man fight, and he's essentially created a paradise throughout the entire universe because he's essentially like habitat for humanity for the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he turns the Viltrumite Empire into. But what was I getting up to?
The final panel?
No. My favorite panel is when Terra goes to that. Well, they're all there, but like Terra's in the gladiator pit. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
She's in the gladiator pit, and she basically beats the gladiator in one move and doesn't kill him. And the entire race of people that were there were freaking out. They're like, "Oh, you're a disgrace. Why wouldn't you end him?" You know. And then the king basically goes up to Mark and tries to kill him, and he just stands there and nothing happens to him. His sword breaks over him. He's like, "Wait, you're as powerful as your champion?" He's like, "We all are." And that's when it clicks with them. He's like, "You're so powerful, you could have killed every single person on this planet in a second, and you just didn't do that."
Yeah.
And that to me is my favorite panel in this entire story, is because he grows so much from, I have all of this power, not using it is more important than using it. And that's why I think the being a hero is bullshit thing springs so true, because he doesn't use his powers.
Yeah.
And he makes a bigger difference. Also, like the last shot is just a really.
What was the final thing that he says? He's remembering his fight with Omni-Man, and he says,
He said, "My dad once asked me what would I do in the next 500 years.
What will I have after 500 years?" Yeah. And then it just like ends with him thinking about it, because you see what he did with the 500 years.
Yeah. And that's what it's so satisfying.
Yeah.
And of course, like the story with his son, like you don't really get that much insight to, but basically like his son's name is Marcus, and he stays on Earth because his stepfather doesn't want him to leave, and he wants to stay there and basically be the superhero, be invincible. Mm-hmm. And you get like a grow up montage, and then him and his son fight just like him and Omni-Man fought, but the difference is they fight because the son resented the father for leaving him, but that's when he found out that he was a rape baby.
Yeah. I will say, Omni-Man almost dies a lot of times in this series, so I really was not expecting him to actually die. I thought, I like when you, and it's very nice to see that like they didn't just kill him off and like Mark didn't get closure, you know. Like Mark got to talk to him on his deathbed, on his deathbed, and finally see him off, you know. I liked Omni-Man's character progression. He went from war hungry monster to I've done wrong to back to loving father when he got back with Debbie to king, you know, and then right back to father at the end with Mark passing that mantle on.
See, I think in the show, obviously, Mark is still the main character. Omni-Man is a big part of the show. But Omni-Man doesn't necessarily become like he's basically a side character for the rest of the entire series after his initial fight.
Well, because Mark gets way stronger than him.
Yeah. So, who do you think is the strongest Viltrumite? Like the strongest Viltrumite potential?
Strongest Viltrumite potential?
Yes. Because obviously, like Thrag is the strongest. You would say Mark is the strongest. Well, I think Mark's son, or Mark's either Mark's son or Mark's daughter are the strongest.
Oh no! No! It's the daughter, because she'd have Adam, Eve, and Viltrumite powers, and she'd be a god. Right?
Yeah, but the son is basically pure Viltrumite.
Okay.
Because his mother was one of the strongest, and his father is the strongest.
I mean, yeah, sure, I guess.
Well, it's never said that she has Adam Eve's powers.
I mean, when it comes to like potential, everybody has potential. Yeah. Whether or not you capitalize it, or how much of that potential that you quote unquote make for yourself, it's all situational. It all depends on you.
Yeah.
You know?
But overall, like I would say, once again, I haven't finished The Walking Dead yet.
You gotta finish that next.
But I would say,
if you want to borrow my compendiums, you can.
Okay, I would say that Invincible right now is the most satisfying comic I've ever read in my entire life.
Yeah.
And That's high praise for me. I think other comics that you could say are just as satisfying, or it's obviously not as long, but All-Star Superman I think is very satisfying. It's a very inspirational, satisfying story, and that's really the only one I can. Astonishing X-Men is very good too because it has a very conclusive ending. But to me, that's what makes it stand out. Not necessarily how well it's written or the art, which is they're both phenomenal. It has a decisive beginning, middle, and end, and that is so rare in this genre of comics.
Yeah.
Maybe not in just like other indie comics, but with superhero comics, it's very rare to actually have that. So, like I said, it's a satisfying ending. I would put it in my top 3 all time.
All time what?
Like greatest comics I've ever read.
Okay.
And that's not fair. Putting it in the top 3 of the greatest comic runs I've ever read.
Comic series.
No, so series would be a good. So a comic run is basically any creative team over a book. So the Jeff Johns Green Lantern run lasted years.
Okay.
This lasted years. Nobody else has ever written Invincible, so it'd be in the series. So
debatable, because right now, at the time of making this podcast, there's like a lawsuit or something where somebody's saying Robert Kirkman stole the Invincible IP, which I don't believe. Just because because after reading The Walking Dead, they are so similar.
Yeah.
In terms of writing, I really don't think that he stole it. I don't know. Maybe the character does not. I don't know. I don't believe it.
Yeah. So do you have anything? Do you think we missed anything on this?
Oh yeah, we missed a shit ton.
Well, we missed a lot, but anything worth talking about?
The dinosaur.
The dinosaurs thing. Well,
no, I'm not saying talk about it. I'm just saying I'm listening because we didn't talk about dinosaurs. We didn't talk about the alien parasites. We didn't talk about. We didn't talk about Thrag's 2 kids. We didn't talk about the final battle with Thrag. Well, we kind of did with the sun.
Well, the Thrag's 2 kids thing. I liked it. At the same time, I didn't like it.
Why not?
To me, it seemed a little cliche. He's a monster.
Yeah.
Right? He does not give a shit about any of his kids.
Yeah.
He bred them specifically for an army, and they're essentially meaningless to him.
Yeah.
There's a very, very graphic panel where he's literally having his kids fly at him so that he can use them as weapons to fight other people, the other Viltrumites and Omni-Man and everything like that.
Thrag uses his kids like
swords.
Like Russia used its soldiers towards the end of World War II, just fucking throwing them at the enemy like they're nothing, just letting them all die endlessly. Just millions of kids flying headfirst into gunfire, dying. That's what Thrag does towards the end here. But yeah. I think that's about it. We talked about everything plot-wise.
Everything that I got from the comic, I've talked about. Everything that I personally saw and loved about it. I don't really think there's anything that I didn't like about it. No,
there's nothing that I didn't like about this series.
Yeah.
I will say, as a final note, if you are interested in, because the show's not finished yet, if you're interested in reading the comics like I was, do not buy the compendiums from a comic book store. Buy them either on Amazon, order them, or order the ebook. Because my first compendium for both The Walking Dead and Invincible, they were each like $60 at the store. But on Amazon, you can get them for like $30 or something.
Yeah, so if you have an iPad, or you can even use it on your phone. So Amazon actually owns Comixology. Comixology is essentially like the Kindle app, but for comic books.
Okay.
And if you buy them, you basically have unlimited cloud storage. You can download it onto your device, whatever. It has a really cool way of reading where you can like double tap on the panel and it'll zoom in, and then it basically reads like a motion comic. It's really cool. I read it on my iPad.
I'm really old fashioned.
I'm old fashioned too, but like I don't have. I had a huge comic book collection at my last duty station, and it was too much to move. So I was like, well, I'm trying to have a minimalist thing here. So
I was expecting to move units here pretty soon, so I have all my stuff packed up, and like half my bags are like movies and books.
Yeah.
Just because I like collecting physical stuff.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to go out and buy the physical copies eventually.
You already have one.
But for me, it was a lot more convenient to read it on my iPad. So Comixology, if you buy it on there, I think it's $30 as well. So it's half the price of getting the hard copy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the hard copy.
Well, it's half the price of getting the hard copy from a comic book store.
Don't buy them from comic book stores; they'll rip you the fuck off.
That's just kind of a normal thing with comics and books in general. There's like they charge the sticker price.
Yeah, but like a lot of times like compendiums are hard to come by though, but not these. The Robert Kirkman ones are everywhere.
Yeah, I would have loved to collect this entire series in single issues. I think that'd be cool.
When I was at the store, I looked into that. I think like a single chapter was like $10 or something.
Oh, did they have them in single issues?
At the store I went to, yeah, they were like $10 for like a single chapter. Like ridiculous, man.
Oh, you mean like little volumes or
there's 70 there is 79 chapters, I believe, to all of Invincible, something like that. And a single one is like $10. As opposed to just paying 30.
So
for
there's
the series.
Quick educational moment. There's different formats to reading comics. So there's single issues, which are basically like little magazines. Then there's trade paperbacks, which collect like 5 or 6 issues into one book. And then there's the omnibus / compendium, which collects over 100 into one.
I'm trying to find a chapter here so I can explain to him like how thick it would be. So yeah, this right here is like one chapter.
Yeah. So that's a single issue. It's like 20 pages.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. So I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. The ones that were $10 were a little bit thicker. So this would probably be like $5 for this right here.
It's probably $1 or $2.
They were not $1. I was there. I saw it. They were not $1. Whatever it was, I was taken back by it. They weren't $1. Anyways, do that thing.
Here's my experience with comic shops. So if it's not currently in print, it'll probably be $1 or $2. If it's currently in print, they can charge up to $5 for a comic, but you can't charge more than $5 for a single comic. Like it's.
They did it. I don't know. Whatever. But yeah, anyways, that's gonna pretty much wrap us up for this episode here. We talked about everything Invincible. How long is it gonna take you to read the rest of Walking Dead?
I'd say we should just go for it next week. If we push out another episode in between now and then we can do that. We can talk about like.
Do you want to borrow my physical compendiums, or you just?
I have everything on my iPad. It's fine. Like I have the entire series. I just didn't finish it yet.
All right. I'm of the opinion that that black and white looks better on paper as opposed to on a phone screen personally, but that's just me.
I read the first compendium in paper. It was fine. Yeah.
But anyways, guys, yeah, that's gonna pretty much wrap us up for this episode. If you enjoyed, then make sure to subscribe and like. Make sure to follow us for our next episode, which will be on The Walking Dead. And with all that being said, we will catch you guys in the next episode.
Later.